You're watching The Sports Objective, the podcast for Pirates. You're listening to Absolute Empowerment with Coach Jeff Connors on The Sports Objective. Join Coach C, a USA Strength and Conditioning Hall of Famer, every Monday night as he and a variety of guests, including former players, former and current coaches, pastors, and others will discuss relevant issues in coaching today's athlete, with the goal of equipping the athlete and those coaching them with the physical, mental, and spiritual armor necessary to live their best life. Here's Coach Connors.
Welcome to Absolute Empowerment. Tonight we have a very special guest with us, Coach Curtis Frye, who has been the head track coach for the South Carolina Gamecocks for 27 years and has some roots with East Carolina University. We're going to talk about that. But the first thing I want to do, Coach, is just welcome you to the show tonight.
Hey, thanks a lot, Coach. Man, I've been trying to get here for a long time. You know,
Yes, sir.
I've heard great things about it.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, this is a Christian podcast. Anything you want to talk about in relationship to your faith, your testimony, some of the things that you overcame in your coaching career, some of the things that you overcame growing up and getting into coaching. We want to get into that if we can. And, but I want to first talk a little bit about your background, of course. In 1974, you began as an assistant coach at ECU after graduating from East Carolina University. And I'll talk a little bit later on about Coach Bill Carson, who I also had the opportunity to coach with myself. So we'll get back to that. But from 1979 to 84, you were at Douglasburg High School. And then 84 to 88, assistant track coach at NC State, where every year you were there, you won the conference. 1988 to 92, assistant at Florida. 92 to 96, then UNC Chapel Hill as assistant head coach. And then you were hired at University of South Carolina as the head track coach in 1996. And you have been incredibly successful with that program since then. Just kind of going through a few of your accolades here. You started the Frye Foundation, which basically raises money and supports diabetes and mental illness. You coached 28 Olympians, 14 of which were medalists, 14 SEC Athletes of the Year. You were a three-time SEC Coach of the Year, a three-time USTCA National Coach of the Year, a Nike Coach of the Year in 2001. You coached 60 NCAA champions, 122 SEC champions, 21 academic All-Americans, and over 500 NCAA All-Americans. And in 1974, you became the first African-American coach at East Carolina University, which is incredible. And Coach, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that in relationship to even before East Carolina, growing up, your experience with athletics, how you landed at ECU as the first African-American coach, a little bit about your experience there, and of course, any of the hardships or challenges that you overcame with your faith.
Wow. Yeah, you did a good job. And by my faith is the reason that we have accomplished the things or any small thing that we have. Because without God and His grace, we would not have been in the places we were, having the impact that we've had. It's all about giving God the credit. He knew before I was born that I'd be at this place at this time speaking.
Amen.
If I give Him the honor and the praise, that He would reward even the steps, that every step that we take. I've been rewarded with a wife of over 45 years who was in East Carolina. I have 3 kids Uh, and one of my daughters went to East Carolina. My sister is a graduate of East Carolina University. I have 7 grandchildren, and my first grandchild is graduating from Spartanburg High this year. So I have been truly, truly blessed.
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes, sir. Well, getting into your East Carolina experience, I had the pleasure of coaching with Coach Carson, and when I was at Carolina, I was at Carolina for 10 years. I brought Coach Carson in because I had such a passion for speed for football through my career. I wanted to have him give his philosophy, his methodology to a large group of coaches up there, and I was so glad that I got him in there. I still have it on video. Coach Carson was a man of the basics. He was a man that believed in hard work, and he was a man that was had the heart of the Lord, and he didn't pull any punches where that was concerned. And I really enjoyed knowing him, and I really enjoyed the presentation that he gave at Carolina, and I enjoyed interacting with him every day at East Carolina during the time that he and I were there together. But I really liked how he would simplify things, and his success was based on more simplicity, hard work, effort, overachievement, overcoming adversity, all those types of things. And I really liked the way that he interacted with the track athletes.
wow. Now you're talking about a giant. I mean, Coach Carson brought me to East Carolina. Coach Henry Trevathan helped me come out for football. Coach Carson discovered me at Sand Hills Community College when he came, and I was a student there, and I was help coaching at Union Pines High School. And he came to watch Alfred McCrimmon and Sammy Phillips, who were two uh, high school All Americans. They were tremendous. Al was a 6'11" high jumper that ran the hurdles really fast, and Sammy was the #1 kid in the state in hurdles that ran 13.6. And I helped work with them. And as I was at a track meet, and Coach Carson and I started talking, and I said, I can help you get those guys to East Carolina if you can get me an opportunity to try out for football for Sonny Randall. And that's kind of led me there. And from there, basically, Dr. Leo Jenkins met me, he and Clarence Stasevich. And I have been working with young Democrats for North Carolina from junior college, and that brought me there, and I brought some of my skills in politics. And Leo was running for the governor after he retired. That was his dream, and I had helped the current governor as a young African American Democrat. And so that's how I was able to be the assistant track coach and the head soccer coach. And they were looking for an African American. I helped Coach Dye recruit Alphonse Hunter and the area of around there, Willie Hawkins as an undergrad. And all those guys were friends of mine, and I became a recruiter. And Coach Dye was an advocate of mine, and Coach Leo Jenkins and Clarence Stasevich hired me
Yes.
after I graduated.
Were you familiar with Henry Van Sant?
Well, Coach Van Sant is the one that got me the opportunity to try football.
Right.
And so Coach Van Sant's my guy. He
Yeah,
and Coach Carson together.
Yes, sir. Yeah, he was my guy too. I really enjoyed interacting with Coach Van Sant during the time I was there as well. Um, so, could you tell us a little bit more about your foundation?
The Frye Foundation is something the accolades and accomplishments that we had. My son CJ, who played football for Lou Holtz here, and he was an Outback center, and he was the offensive lineman of the Outback Bowl, and all of that. Tore his knee up, and then he became he graduated in the School of Business, and then now he works in taxes. Well, my nephew Philip, who played at Gardner Webb, they sit me down after about 11 years ago, and they said, "What can we do to elevate? Because I have diabetes, and how can we bring attention to diabetes? And we have people in our family that struggle with depression and anxieties and bipolar and different issues which we were not talking about, and they convinced me that rather than do a lot of walking and 5Ks and that we make contributions every year to every kind of foundation for health. This is why don't we get us a non-for-profit and formulate such that we could touch life? And I didn't want to do it, but then they convinced me we could touch more people, and so I decided I would do it. And the next thing we did, we started a walk for diabetes, and then we started a golf tournament over in Pinehurst, and then we do a gala. Lou Holtz and Steve Spurrier and Jackie Joyner and Carl Lewis and those kind of persons came on board to help us out, and they would come every year to Pinehurst to play golf. This year we're going to have Phil Ford,
Yeah.
and he's going to be our guy, a celebrity golfer. Donnell Wolford and Danny Peoples from NC State. So guys who I've been in their lives. I recruited Phil, try to get Phil to come to East Carolina because I recruited all sports as the only black coach that were there. Ruff McNeil, I convinced Ruff McNeil to come to school there. He's my guy. So I helped talk East Carolina into hiring Ruffin, and that was a process. So I've been involved with East Carolina from the time of 1972 to right now, 45 years later.
Yes, sir. I had the honor of coaching with Ruff as well, twice. I did not mention that you're also in the Hall of Fame at East Carolina University, and I know you consider that to be a great honor as well. And particularly looking at the way that you came in there, and that did you play football your whole career there, or tell me a little bit about that?
Never.
Okay.
I went through a fall of the year and did not make it on Coach Sonny Randall. We just didn't make it together. And then I stayed on. Coach Carson had brought me, and then I went out for track, which I wasn't very good. And Coach Carson didn't have an assistant coach.
Gotcha.
So I got involved with Coach Carson, and then I got involved with helping recruit. And everybody saw that I had a skill to help get the athletes from Eastern North Carolina to come. I joined a fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha, and I organized a group called Souls, and a group called EBO, Independent Black Organization on East Carolina campus. I started voter registration, and then the next thing they did was sent me to some clinics, and I learned how to coach soccer. And then at the soccer, I still have the winningest record in East Carolina history. We beat Duke, NC State, Duke, Appalachian, UNC Chapel Hill twice during our 4 years. We beat Campbell College, who was the Division II national champions in that year. And those are the things that brought me the recruitment that brought me to the Hall of Fame, which I never thought, and the fact I was two-time Olympic coach
Yeah.
and the Hall of Fame coach for track and field, and in North Carolina that we won so many championships down in Fayetteville and Douglasburg. I think those are reasons that I was elected to the Hall of Fame, because there's so many people athletically that are not in that Hall of Fame that I just feel so honored to be in the company of the uh, Ruffin McNeils and Carlester Crumpler and Kepley, and Eddie Hicks, because I convinced Eddie Hicks to come to school. Also, Hawkins, Hicks, Green, all of those are guys that I helped Coach Dye recruit.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm just honored to have you on the show, and I'm very honored to finally be able to meet you and talk a little bit more about your experiences at East Carolina and your overall coaching successes as well. Looking at a little bit with nuts and bolts, because I'm just crazy about speed development and have been for about 30 years, but just looking at a few, I guess you could say, figures in track and field and a little bit about what they emphasized. What can you say about Tom Tellez? What I say about Tom Tellez is he was all about arm stroke. That's what I picked up from him. And
Wow.
so a couple things about Tom Tellez.
Coach Tellez is a genius. You got to realize Coach Tellez's background is in engineering and architect, and so then he applied that to the sport of track and field, along with getting to know a guy by the name of Wilbur Ross, who was a physicist who worked for the Dwight Eisenhower, and so Tom used his background in science along with Wilbur to design patterns of acceleration.
Right.
And so acceleration requires arm use early to get to max speed, because the first three steps is 60% of max velocity. And if you don't put your feet down in the right position, you can't propel yourself from zero, from inertia to 60%. So Tom was big on sled pulls, arm moves early, and then get up with relaxation for the finish. And so those are things they're basics, but everyone hadn't been emphasizing at that time.
Right.
And so those are things I learned. Dr. Leroy Walker was the biggest break for me. Coach Carson did not go to a lot of clinics. So when I became his assistant, he made sure that I would go get all the books and do the clinics, bring the information, and my job was to give him information from other people, because he was very, very competitive against all those Tom Tellez's and Leroy Walkers.
Yeah.
But he would apply, and Coach Carson developed something called rotary running, after understanding that the knees have to be even at the time of contact with the ground
Right.
at max speed, and
Right.
it had to come to a front side instead of back side. In the olden days, even on the Tom, there was a long back swing, and so we come to learning from Dr. Ralph Mann that you shorten the back swing and make most of the running at max speed come from front side. And
Right.
so uh,
Now, with football, of course, a lot of strength coaches studying speed always want to go to Charlie Francis, and
yeah,
what he's known for, I guess, one of the things he's known for that a lot of coaches use in my profession is tempo training and trying to figure out where to put tempo training in the weekly schedule. So do you implement different forms of tempo training?
Yeah, that comes from San Diego State, from way back in the days. Uh, Interval and tempo, so that you can get more reps of the right mechanics, and don't run at max, but run at right. And so if you can take tempo from all distances by multiple young runs of 30s. Football coaches been doing tempo turnarounds and suicides for basketball coach. Just have a whistle and let a person keep repetitive runs, but make sure the arms are swinging and the knee is there, and then do it enough times that it become a habit.
Yeah.
And so tempo is a means of breaking bad habit. It's because kids have been running all of their lives.
Right.
It takes 1,000 reps of doing something right to break a single bad habit, but it takes one bad habit to return to the bad habit. That's why football coaches hit right angles at everything. That's why they push sleds, and that's why they turn their hips and pop. The right angle is the most powerful angle in the body.
Yeah.
A boxer protects a right angle and applies force. So tempo is rehearsing right angles for a distance that you want to go most efficient. So if you're going to run the 100, you got to run enough repetitions of 100 meters in a proper mechanic. If you're going to run 60, 50, 30, then those are things you got to do 100 times,
Right.
and then you become efficient at it.
So a couple other guys, Bill Anderson puts me in mind of wicket training. Do you do much wicket training?
Well, Coach Carson and I started before wickets were called wickets. We had that's a measurement of a distance of a person that runs fast for the first acceleration, the first 21 steps or
Yeah.
20 steps. Uh, and so we ran over sticks,
Yeah.
and then I turned the sticks into uh, slices of rubber that is 6 inches wide and 18 inches long, and measure off the first step from a line at 4 feet and a half, and the next step 4 feet and 9 inches, and it progresses by 3 inches until you reach maximum speed. And then you spread it out until they run 40-yard dash and that's how you get a person to run from a 4.8 to a 4.6 is the same number of strides, 21, but stride length and stride frequency. So 21 steps is frequency, and as you increase the stride length, then that person ends up increasing the distance, and then his time ends up being the same. So the same number of steps, increase the stride, and that's how you get. And so then become wickets. You put
Right.
wickets down, and so that person has to run over things. So we use wickets, and we set them up for acceleration. Then we put them at max speed, where a person's max stride is, let's say, you want them in the middle of the race to be at 7 feet apart. When you get them accustomed to running a build up into wickets in place, so they can run 7, and then you started moving those out so that they learn how to hit force while they're in the max speed. And then you use wickets later for fatigue.
Right.
There, so you reduce fatigue, so that you reduce the distance and from 7 feet back to 6 feet, because 100 starts out at 5 feet or up to 21 steps, and then you go 20 steps of where you're running out at 7 feet, and then you got to reduce them 6, 11, on down to back into the 5 into the finish. If not, people will start overstriding when they're in fatigue.
Yeah.
So those are yes, we do use wicked. It's changed from running over sticks to running over rubber bands. It's changed from pulling tires to pulling weights and sleds, from pulling balloons and parachutes
Yeah.
to very few things have changed, but the names of what you've done has changed from pulling with a rubber band to pulling them with a tiny rope to now you have a 1080,
Yeah.
which just puts amount of force from the first step to 80 meters. So not different, but got more mechanics.
Yeah. Sprint 1080 is about 20 grand for each unit. I went up to Ohio State to their strength clinic, and they had a Sprint 1080 up there. But I used to use run rockets, and they also
Yeah,
probably had 20 run rockets up there. But I like the run rockets for football because I could train so many guys at one time. Everybody had their own belt, and they could just click in and click out.
yep.
And
I got him in my garage.
okay.
I was down there today getting signs for the Frye Foundation to put around the golf course out at Whispering Pine. This week
Okay.
we're going to be there, and I had to get out the sponsors and people that supported us, and I just looked over there and I go like, oh, there it is. I ought to take that to practice. Everybody laughed me out of here. And they'll come away, but they accomplished the same thing. But it's back to individual attention. Group
Right.
attention will get you run out of the business.
Yeah.
Uh, Personal attention and personal relationships are the key to people's success. If you have no relationship, it becomes business, and then you can't hit the hot button or the means in which to push the adrenaline to step to the level to compete. If you don't know me personally, you can't get me in the struggle to be successful.
Right. Well, I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named Kevin McNair. He's the first guy that I met when I was trying to figure out how to train football players for speed. I was a defensive back in college, so I was always interested in trying to get faster. And then when I went to visit the Philadelphia Eagles when I was at Bucknell, the strength coach brought in Kevin McNair from across the country to train them. So I think he was kind of like the godfather of speed for football. He was one of Charlie Francis's teammates, and basically was the first person that I ever really ran into that really taught you how to put force into the ground, the importance of force into the ground, how your arms controlled your legs, and then over time, what we found was, you got to put force in the ground, but the fastest people in the world get off the ground. So,
Yeah,
so that's always been interesting to me. And
that's where
so with
plyometrics become the big part of teaching the central nervous system to return force.
right,
That's weight room with snatches and cleans, the Olympic lifts help you create the power, but then the plyometrics apply the force. If you can have people can uh, can do 700-pound front squats and can't run fast.
right,
But the plyo transfer where you get the hops and the jumps and those have to be coordinated into the weight room to help a person to be able to put the force in the ground.
sure,
Uh, and so, but it's still not old. They need to. In my days, we used to jump over the benches in the locker room,
yeah,
and how fast you jump the benches, on off, on off, on off, and then go outside and uh, Terry Long, a guy that was at East Carolina that I got to go there to sign when I was coaching in high school with Ed Emery. I walked him out, and they had that small fence there, and the guy jumped the fence and he was a 320-pound guy that was only 6 foot tall. And Ed turned around and said, "Let's go in. We don't need to see him run no 40."
There you go.
He signed the guy, and the guy hadn't played high school for because he was so explosive.
Now, do you think there's a connection with, let's say, you're able to squat heavier weight, and do you see any correlation there with that type of strength and then short acceleration ability?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, but you still have to have a way to train the central nervous system. You're either born with a central nervous system with the capacity to fire, and most people don't train the system. They don't wake the system up. They just get stronger and stronger and stronger.
Right.
But if you don't do anything about engaging the glutes, the hip flexor, through jumping rope or jumping, even Muhammad Ali, guys, you have to work on the central nervous system, your ability to fire the muscle. Now, if the muscle is weak and you're firing it, it gets hurt. So you can't have somebody can just fire, 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 and don't have no strength to support the natural nervous system that good parents bless you with.
Right.
But everybody has potential to run faster. Everybody's got a central nervous system. The slowest person can be that person's fast.
Yeah.
A donkey the fastest donkey can win the donkey derby, but he cannot win the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, gotcha.
Thoroughbreds running in Kentucky. Donkeys running donkey derby. So
Well, makes sense to me.
You have to train what you have. What you can control is yourself. Be the best you.
Yeah.
And every day put the best you effort out. And when you get people doing that, they have to learn that failing is okay. Because sometimes being your very best, you're going to get beat. But it isn't your best.
Movement was always so important to me. And, I don't know how you feel about this, but I always, over time, I guess, I came to the conclusion that I wanted to train my skill guys and even some of my linebackers, like sprinters and hurdlers. And one of the guys that I kind of connected myself with was Boo Shakespeare. And I really, I was very much influenced by Boo in that, one of the things that he talked about with those guys is you got to come off of the heavy leg work once you get into in season and change the ballistics because you want to recapture coordination, proprioception, elasticity. And so I always really liked that theory, I guess you could say, with those skill guys for football. What do you think about that?
100%.
Yeah.
You can't be training and competing. Heavy loads slows the muscle's ability to handle the central nervous system's natural ability to fire. So you're gonna have dull play, dull movement. I mean, you need sleep and recovery and lots of water. Because if you're dehydrated and your elasticity is limited, and you can be as powerful as you want to be. So it's a combination of things. You don't want to be fatigued in the biggest contest.
Yeah.
You got to taper, even in football. And when you're playing in the SEC, I mean, I've watched people you got to have so many people because people keep loading because lots of time people believe toughness you play through. And many times you don't have to be tough. You have to be fresh. A good strength coach is the reason most teams win.
Yeah. Well, hey, I'm retired now, but I like that. Uh, I love to get down there sometimes, see what y'all do, and I really like to look at those measurements. Because I've fooled around with a lot of different measurements with wickets,
Hey,
and
come by and we got a formula. We work out or have the new guy. I mean, Boo is the greatest about muscle and muscle recovery and force application in any event, from high
yeah,
jump to triple jump to 100 meters. He's absolute best.
right,
And but I got a guy that he and oh God, he's a guy that worked at Texas A&M, and I can't think he doesn't work there any longer. But what they do is he was a descendant of Tom Tellez
yeah,
and Vince Anderson. And what
okay,
Vince has done over the years is accumulate the best people's results and how fast they were at different distances from the first step to the last step of 100 meters and so what we have is where the wickets are for the person that runs uh 10-8 or a person that runs a 4-5, and so we can progress our wickets from a person that's a 4-8, so we can put a ladder down so you can run the repetitions, so you're doing your tempo in a stride pattern that's for a 4-5 guy.
right,
And then we get enough of those that becomes a 4-5 guy. And then we got the layout for a 4-3 guy. So we'll progress the person through the first 10 steps of a 4-3. And then we'll get it to a 11th and a 12th. So we got a whole formula that laid out that we draw on the ground in different colors.
uh-huh.
So we take the wickets away, and then we run over the top of the colors, the crayon we put down, and let the person, and then we put the wicket out at max speed for the rest of the distance. We
So
got it in a book.
I got you. So it's somewhat individualized in relationship to how far you can project your hips through the air.
Yes.
Got you.
Dr. Ralph Mann is, if you ever get a chance, Ralph Mann published what most of the people around the world study to determine what position your hips are going to be at max velocity.
Yeah, I
And
have
it
read.
changes per 100 person. So when when a new group coming, like right now, you got more 9 point um, under 10-second kids ever in history.
Yeah,
So in turn, the model has changed from what it was when Carl Lewis's hips were moving. So
now
all the computer does is keep taking a guy that's 6'5", where he's got to be in force, and where a guy that's 5'5", that's run the fastest, that's run whatever force he can put down. So you can take the steps for a shorter person that runs 4'5", and a tall person that runs 4'5", and you can write a prescription of wicket for each different size.
mm,
I can take Gail Devers' pattern, and when I get a girl that's 5'3" that can vertical jump and can do a 3-step bound into the sand, improve her bound to be like Gail Devers, move her over to a stride, and then try and turn her into the fastest woman, or at 5'3".
yeah,
And that's what people have done. That's what Boo and them have got at LSU. They got an overlay of clear plastic that they just take the workout and they flop it over on what a girl or a guy ran 25 years ago, and they try to duplicate the next athlete that comes in, and they put them into that overlay, and they find where you are slower at what point in that race than this person that ran this prescribed time, and then they work on that over a 3-year period.
Gotcha.
And the
So
same can happen in all sports.
yeah.
I don't want to
So
miss the opportunity to talk about. You said faith.
yes,
'Cause
sir.
I'm Deacon Curtis Frye at New Ebenezer Baptist Church. My
Okay.
faith is from the time I was a 12-year-old or younger at Frye's Chapel Baptist Church um, to the time I was 18 years old and going to uh, sunrise service for Easter. Um, and going and coming back from East Carolina when I was 21 years old. And after having sit in a rainy car with a guy named Blake who was all American in wrestling. And he was a young man, and he said to me, "Have you ever been saved?" And I sit there with him. He was a white kid that was 100 and I think 121-pound wrestler. And then he converted and said, "What you have to do, all you have to do is confess Christ, believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, and acknowledge it, and say you believe, and you're saved." I've been living all my life going to the Baptist church, and I was waiting to figure what it was. I couldn't. I knew I've been studying Bible verses. My mama and them made us repeat them. We had a holiness preacher that if you made a mistake, you need to come to the front of the church and ask for forgiveness. But I had not confessed Christ. I did it, and that Easter that year, I went home from East Carolina, and I went to the sunrise at 5:30 in the morning on Easter. Blake had told me what it took, but I didn't know how to do it. I didn't feel no different after I said it. But that morning, I was sitting there in the church, and my aunties and my grandmother and all of them were praying and washing feet and my daddy and all of them were going over telling stories about how they walked 5 miles of school, and they only had one pair of brown pants, and the brother had a blue pair, and how they worked in the field all day, and how they saw that my grandfather get hit walking in vast because he was on the wrong side of the street. They was telling these horrific things, and for some reason I started crying. I'm a 20-year-old, 21-year-old, try to be football player in college. And they come to me and they all come and they put their hands on me and they start saying, "Why are you crying?" I said, "Because I don't have no story. I don't know what being saved is. I haven't been through not having a meal to eat. I have not been through not having two pair of shoes. I haven't been through not being able to go to college or drinking at a water fountain where black people couldn't drink. I had not been to a movie theater where I had to go to a different one. I saw one in Vass, but I personally had not been through it. So I didn't know the struggles. And they hugged me and they said, "Live long enough.
Right.
You will have a testimony." A few years later at East Carolina, I went to Boone, North Carolina. I had to stay in the hospital because I had a cyst on the back of my neck. They left me in the hospital, and then I come back, and a few years later, I had a cyst on my lung, and they had to remove it. And then a few years later, I had a child born, and he had Strider. And a few years later, I had a testimony. God helped me overcome because of the struggles I have, I was able to get up so I could be there and lay beside my mother when she was in hospice telling me, I told you he's coming back. And I said, no, Mom, you got to keep living. She says, no, he said he's coming back. Don't revive me. Jesus is coming back. He coming to get me. I need you to tell me you going to be ready when he comes. Salvation was different for me at different stages from the time I was 12 to the time I was 18 to the time I got to be laying beside my mama in a hospice. I was saved, but I didn't have no testimony. It didn't have enough strength to talk to somebody that's going to go through some pains. The sun ain't going to always rise. There's going to be some rain sometime. And you need to go through the rain so you can appreciate the sunshine. Jesus didn't promise us that he's going to keep us from going through struggles. He promised he was going to be there to get us through the struggle. I'm sorry, I don't mean to get to tell the stories.
No,
But,
don't be sorry. That's the whole purpose of my podcast, Coach.
yeah.
Preach on, brother. I need you to make a move to your left or right so I can see you. I can't see you right now.
I'm leaning over.
There we go. There we go.
Hey, I went to Coach Carson took us out to Blackjack Church
Yeah.
when I was a sophomore, junior in college. Took all black boys out there to Sunday school.
Okay.
They took us 3 times in a row. We went and ate and they fed us. But this is a tough one. And then Coach Carson, someone talked to Coach Carson about why he keep bringing all these black boys out here. Coach Carson changed membership. That's why I love this man.
Yeah.
He said, if I can't have faith that would be influence on my black kids, I can't be here. Now, everybody wasn't that way, but somebody approached him.
Yeah.
I tell that story to tell you what kind of man. His faith was not something that he talked about. He lived it. And he lived it when I wasn't the fastest guy. I wasn't the strongest guy, and I didn't get no points.
Yeah.
His faith was bigger for a guy that didn't do anything for South Carolina. I mean, for the East Carolina University track.
Right.
He did something for a guy that needed identity in his faith. I had to know that a white man who was a Christian would put his faith up where his mouth was.
Yeah.
Because I had never seen it. I was young in my life, and it created so that I can have a different relationship with people that are not of the same color. And I think to this day, our kids say, Coach Frye, he gonna not treat us all equal, but he gonna treat us fair.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things I've always loved about athletics, and my father was a coach too. I mean, I never really thought about race or anything like that very much. I just thought about trying to win, And I used to pick up some guys in a van when I was coaching at ECU and take them to Cornerstone Church. They probably knew who the white guy was coming in Cornerstone Church, at that time. But
Yeah.
I had about a half a dozen guys I'd pick up and take there. And this emblem on my jacket, Armored Life, is my website. And I started that because I just felt like after I retired, I just wondered, is there anything I can do to help save some of the guys that, went by the wayside during their career? You know how you get a certain class coming in as freshmen, and then by the time they get to their senior year, there's not a whole lot of them left for some reason.
Yeah.
And, you really like to think that you can help them stay in school and help them become successful through their career.
Well, that's a walk. Getting somebody to be 35 or 40 years old so that the cognitive side of the brain has developed. Lots of time you got people got to go through their struggle. They're knocked down and get up, and somebody's got to be there with them when they get knocked down and tell them they're going to recover,
Yes,
just
sir.
like we do in rehabbing somebody's injury. The soul and the person gets injured,
Yeah.
and we just all we can be is that's what I want to say. Pray for me, brother. You're gonna pray for them, still be there, and say, I'm gonna be here because I know you're gonna go through that struggle. You're gonna fall down. And
Yeah.
and that's what all we can do is be somebody that's a conduit for return and be that role model and the examples. And they got to see people that were there not just because they were a good athlete.
Yeah.
I tell you, Lou Holtz does something that's incredible. Lou Holtz remembers and calls injured football players,
Mm.
not the ones that made it.
Yeah.
And I don't like everything about Lou, but
Yeah.
I do know he calls my son who tore up his knee.
Mm.
And he calls people at Notre Dame just to say, "Hey, you all right, Bo? And you know your name." I was with him at Notre Dame, South Carolina's game down there, and you wouldn't be the outpouring of players that came to see that old guy. And
Yeah.
I don't agree with his politics. I ain't into that one. But I know this: he cares
Yeah.
about his kids,
Yeah.
and that's what all we can do, Coach. Is let them know we care. And those that say we don't care whenever they fall down, hey, don't let it be true.
Right.
What you
Well,
say about me can't be about who I am. I don't worry about that.
I hear that. Well, I feel so honored to have had you on the show, and thank you so much for sharing those things. And we're going to try to get it out there where we get some listeners. And I know the Pirate Nation tunes into the Sports Objective now. I think they get more and more followers as they progress. But I just appreciate it so much, and finally being able to connect with you. And do
Hey,
you have
Coach,
any?
I want to tell the Pirate Nation to follow the Frye Foundation,
Okay.
diabetes.org. Go down, make a contribution. There are kids that need counseling all around North Carolina. There are kids that sit on steps and do opioids because they are depressed and low and they need somebody. We got friends out here that are members of Frye Foundation that are a counseling organization. My cousin Barbara Falk is a counselor in a county, Moore County, and those kids around Lee County. And there's things that resources that kids can't get to that are in school. There are homeless kids that are in schools that sleep in cars. There are all kinds of people that need to be reached, and there are organizations that are national, but we need local grassroots people who know where kids are and families are. We need churches that take vouchers that give a Frye Foundation uh, uh, a voucher to use in counseling. So if there's a kid struggling and thinking about suicide, or a kid who don't have a service dog that's got diabetes, that they can reach the Frye Foundation, and we'll find a way to support them. And if there's kids that can go to East Carolina camp for diabetes at the hospital,
Right.
we will find a way for somebody to get there. But we need resources, and we don't turn our resources over to national associations.
Gotcha.
We go right in the neighborhood. So
Okay.
East KU, I'm the same old grassroots guy from Eastern North Carolina that played with Kerry Cadet and Ruffin McNeils and all them guys. Them my guys, Danny Kepley. Those y'all don't know. They don't know these names.
I know
But
them. Yeah.
okay.
A lot of people know those
Butch
names.
Butch Strotterman.
Yeah.
Now we talking about Carlessa Crumpler. I mean, we talk about some great ones. I'm so proud of ECU and its connections to Eastern North Carolina.
Yeah.
Eastern North Carolina is the greatest place for a person to come up, and I love it, and I love the people from Eastern North Carolina. And go Pirates!
Well, I moved here in 91 and I'm still here somehow. So I hear you there. Well,
It's
thanks so
awesome.
much, Coach. Really appreciate it.
If I can ever help, and you have a minute, I don't mind. I love getting back on and
Okay.
spending time with my family, East
Yes, sir.
Carolina. Now I'm gonna say things that ain't everybody gonna like, but hey, they know it came from me.
Yeah, I don't worry about that. And that was kind of agreed upon when I decided to do this podcast. So yeah, we want to talk about our Lord and Savior, and we want to lift folks up every day. So we want to get up in the morning, think about who we can lift up every single day. And I really appreciate your time, Coach. And I'm going to go ahead and sign out now. We'll get back at it someday, and hopefully I can get down there and visit you and take a look at some of those stride patterns you got set up.
Come on down, Coach, and
Okay.
then hey, one day we'll all meet.
Yes, sir.
Amen.
Well, this is Jeff Connors signing off for Absolute Empowerment. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot, Coach.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Absolute Empowerment with Coach Jeff Connors on The Sports Objective. Join us every Monday night for a new edition of the show. Listen to the show pretty much everywhere podcasts are found. Be sure to follow us on social media at The Sports OBJ on Twitter and TikTok, at The Sports Objective on Instagram. Like and follow our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. As always, we appreciate you listening to the show. And go Pirates!